They warned her never to go beyond the river. Beyond it lay the cursed woods, a place whispered to devour anyone foolish enough to enter. But when Kiala's path crosses with Riagor, the creature with the body of a serpent and the head of a wolf, everything she thought she knew about monsters changes. He was born from a curse, neither wolf nor snake, banished even by the shifters who created him. Feared, hated, forgotten. Yet when his cold, scaled body coils protectively around her instead of striking, Kiala realizes the beast isn't what he seems. She should run. She should scream. But his voice, rough, low, and aching with loneliness, roots her in place. And those eyes, those cursed golden eyes, hold more pain than any monster should bear. Now, trapped between two worlds, Kiala must face a truth she never imagined. The real danger isn't the creature before her. It's the feeling growing between them. A love so forbidden it could destroy them both, because she's human, and he's the cursed wolf snake. In a world where love burns brighter than reason, and hearts hide darker secrets than the night. You're listening to Tales by Jenny Moon, stories whispered from the edge of emotion. Close your eyes, take a breath, let the tale begin. And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like and share if you love these stories. Every click helps keep the tales alive. The moon was thin that night, a silver blade cutting through the dark clouds that hung over the valley. The villagers had long since barred their doors, muttering prayers to ward off what roamed the woods. But Kiala didn't believe in old fears, not until desperation forced her to. Her brother's fever burned through the night, his breaths ragged and weak. The healer had said only one thing could save him, the lunar bellflower, a rare herb that bloomed once every full moon beyond the forbidden river, beyond the place no one returned from. So, while the village slept, Kiala wrapped herself in her worn cloak, took her small basket, and stepped into the night. The river's voice guided her, soft and cruel, whispering secrets of things that lived in the mist. She hesitated at its edge. The fog shimmered, thick as breath, curling like fingers around her ankles. Just herbs, she whispered to herself. Just herbs, for him. She crossed. The forest beyond was unlike anything she knew. Trees rose like black pillars into a sky that seemed alive, pulsing, breathing. The air was heavy with moss and something older, something that watched. Every step felt like an intrusion. She knelt by a patch of faintly glowing plants, her fingers trembling as she plucked one. Lunar bellflower, she breathed. Please be enough. The wind changed. The forest stilled. That was when she felt it. Not sound, not sight, but presence. A weight pressing against the back of her neck. Her heart stuttered. Slowly, she turned. Two golden eyes glowed in the fog. At first she thought it was a wolf. Massive, silent. But then it moved, and her breath caught in her throat. The shape shifted with fluid grace. The glint of scales rippled beneath fur. When the creature exhaled, the air hissed. A serpent's sound. Kiala stumbled back, clutching the herb against her chest. Her mind screamed to run, but her legs refused. The creature's gaze held her, ancient and unyielding. Then, from the trees behind her, came a second growl, deeper, multiplied. Eyes, dozens of them, flared to life in the dark. Shadow wolves. Kiala gasped and spun around, realizing too late that she was surrounded. Their shapes emerged from the mist, thin bodies of smoke, jaws dripping with shadow. One lunged, she screamed, and then a roar tore through the night, shaking the ground beneath her feet. The shadow wolf was thrown aside, its form splitting into smoke. The creature, him, stood between her and death. The wolf snake. He moved with impossible strength, his claws cutting through mist and flesh alike. The wolf snarled and circled, but none could get close. His tail, scaled, black as onyx, lashed out, cracking the air with each strike. Kiala could only watch, frozen, as the impossible battle unfolded. When the last of the shadow wolves dissolved into smoke, silence fell again. The forest trembled in his wake. Her rescuer turned toward her. Golden eyes met hers, not beastly but intelligent, searching, and for a heartbeat she forgot to breathe. Why did you help me? Her voice was barely a whisper. He didn't answer. He only stared, nostrils flaring as if scenting her fear, or something else. Then his gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. She took a step back and the world spun. The adrenaline that had kept her upright bled away, replaced by exhaustion and fear. Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was his hand, clawed, massive, reaching toward her as the darkness claimed her. When Kiala woke, the world was still. The air smelled of rain and stone. She blinked slowly, trying to understand the dim light flickering around her. A cave. Her heartbeat quickened. She sat up too fast, wincing as pain shot through her ankle. The herbs, gone. Her basket, gone. But she was alive. Water dripped from the ceiling into a small pool nearby, glowing faintly blue from the veins of crystal embedded in the rock. The air was warm, thick with a strange musk. And then she heard it, breathing, low, deep, steady. Kiala turned her head slowly and froze. The creature sat near the mouth of the cave, half in shadow, half in light. He was larger than any man, his body shaped with the strength of a predator and the grace of something unearthly. His chest rose and fell with slow control. The upper half was furred, but it faded into smooth, dark scales that coiled behind him in a massive serpent's tail. And yet, he wasn't hideous. Terrifying, yes, but there was a wild beauty to him, the kind that could never exist in the world of men. Kiala's throat tightened. He was watching her. She forced herself to speak, though her voice shook. You brought me here. His eyes glimmered faintly in the dim light. You were dying. His voice was rough, not human, not beast. It was deep and resonant, like thunder caught in stone. She swallowed hard. You can speak. I can do many things your kind has forgotten. The words made her flinch, but not from fear, from curiosity. My kind? He tilted his head slightly, studying her. The ones who forget the forest has eyes and rules. Kiala hesitated, gripping her knees. If you wanted me dead, you could have let the shadows take me. A flicker passed through his gaze, something unreadable. You carry a scent I haven't known in centuries. What does that mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he rose, the movement fluid and predatory. She scrambled back as he approached, heart hammering. Stay back. I won't harm you. He stopped a few paces away, the low light catching on the faint scars across his chest. Unless you try to run. She met his eyes, and for a moment she saw something there she didn't expect. Sadness. Why did you save me? She whispered. His gaze lowered to the herbs drying near the fire he had built. Because you crossed the river for love, not greed. Her breath hitched. You. How do you know that? He turned away. I smell truth as easily as blood. The silence stretched. Only the soft crackle of fire filled the cave. Kiala's fear softened just slightly, replaced by something she didn't understand. Gratitude, maybe. Or the strange comfort of being seen by something that shouldn't understand her at all. Finally, she asked, What are you? He didn't turn. A curse that remembers what it means to be alive. And that somehow hurt her more than it should have. She didn't move again until exhaustion reclaimed her. Her eyes fluttered shut, and the last thing she saw was him, still sitting there unmoving like a sentinel carved from shadow and firelight. But even through the haze of sleep she could feel it, that invisible thread between them, faint but real. Like the forest itself had tied their fates together. And outside the moon broke free from the clouds, bathing the cave entrance in silver light. The wolf snake lifted his head toward it, his golden eyes soft with something dangerously close to longing. He whispered her name, though she'd never told him. Kiela. The echo carried through the woods, and the forest listened. The morning came quietly, sneaking through cracks in the stone, painting the cave walls with pale light. Kiala woke to silence, the kind of silence that pressed against the skin. She blinked, unsure for a moment where she was, until memory returned like a rush of cold water. The forest, the shadow wolves, the creature who saved her. Her eyes darted toward the mouth of the cave. He was there. Riagor. He sat motionless, back turned to her, his massive frame half lit by sunlight filtering through the mist outside. His scales shimmered faintly, black with undertones of green that glowed when he breathed. His fur bristled with the quiet tension of someone who didn't sleep even when he closed his eyes. Kiala stayed still, unsure if she should speak. Part of her wanted to run. The other part couldn't look away. She studied the way his shoulders rose and fell, deliberate, restrained, as though each breath was a choice. The fire from last night had burned out, leaving the faint smell of smoke and herbs. She sat up carefully. The stone beneath her was cold. Her ankle ached, but it was bound neatly with a strip of dark cloth. She touched it gently and froze. The bandage wasn't human-made. It was scaled, like the shed skin of a serpent. Her pulse jumped. Riagor turned slightly at the sound, his voice a low rumble. "You should not move yet." His tone wasn't cruel. It was firm, but there was something behind it. A fatigue that sounded like it had been carried for centuries. "I didn't ask for your help," she said softly, testing the air between them. He didn't look at her. "I didn't offer it. You were dying. I acted. Then why am I still here?" A pause. Then slowly, he turned to face her fully. The sight made her breath catch. His eyes, molten gold, fierce yet tired, locked onto hers. "Because night still hunts," he said. "Leave before it does again." Her heart clenched. His words were final, yet his tone wasn't. He sounded almost conflicted. "Night still hunts?" she repeated. "The shadow wolves," he replied. "They are not of this world anymore. They feed on fear. They will follow your scent until dawn fades. Then I'll leave at sunrise." He rose, the movement fluid and unnervingly graceful for his size. "You'll leave now." The command in his voice struck something deep inside her, but beneath that power, there was a fracture, a note of sorrow that didn't belong to a monster. Kiala swallowed. "If you wanted me gone, you could have left me in the forest." Riagor's jaw tightened. His tail coiled once behind him, scraping softly against the rock. "You don't understand what I am." "Then tell me." He looked at her for a long time, as though deciding whether she was worth the truth. Then he turned away again, stepping toward the cave's edge. Outside, the mist was thinning, sunlight barely touching the trees. "I am what remains when curses forget how to die," he said quietly. "Half wolf, half serpent, and neither wanted." Kiala stared at him. "Cursed by who?" "By those who thought they could shape power and not be consumed by it." His claws dug into the stone. "Your kind." "My kind?" she echoed, frowning. "Humans?" His gaze flickered to her, sharp and accusing. "Witches." The word hit her like a slap. She froze, her lips parting, but no sound came. How could he know? Her coven's existence was a secret buried under generations of silence. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied, too fast. Riagor's eyes darkened. "Do not lie to me, Kiela." Her breath caught at the sound of her name. He said it again, slowly this time, as if tasting the memory of it. "Kiala." It wasn't possible. She hadn't told him. How do you know my name?" He didn't answer. The silence between them grew heavier, filling the cave like mist. He turned away, his claws curling against the stone, and for a moment, he looked less like a beast and more like a man haunted by his own memories. "Tell me," she pressed, her voice trembling now. "How do you know my name?" Ryagor's chest rose sharply. "Because I heard it once," he said, barely above a whisper. "Long ago. Before I was this." The words sank into her like ice. "That doesn't make sense. Nor does the way your heartbeat echoes in my head," he said, his voice cracking for the first time, "or the way your scent silences the noise in me." Kiala's pulse raced. The air between them shifted, no longer cold, no longer just fear. Something else moved there, unseen but alive. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Neither do I," he said. The admission startled her. The great creature, this nightmare from every village tale, confessing confusion like a man lost. Outside, thunder rumbled, a storm gathering. Ryagor glanced toward the sky. "The forest will wake with the storm. You cannot stay." Kiala stood, ignoring the pain in her ankle. "You said the shadow wolves would hunt till dawn. It's barely morning." He turned to her sharply. "You test my patience." "Maybe," she said, voice firming, "but I don't take orders from creatures who save my life and then throw me into danger again." The faintest flicker, a shadow of a smile, touched his lips before vanishing. "You have fire," he said. "You have secrets," she shot back. A long silence. Then Ryagor looked away. "Leave before the storm. That is all I will say." Kiala hesitated, glancing toward the forest beyond the cave. The fog outside moved like something alive, coiling around the trees. She could almost feel the cold fingers of the shadow wolves waiting out there. "Why are you so eager to send me away?" she asked softly. His claws stilled. "Because the longer you stay here, the more the forest will notice, and it doesn't forgive trespassers." "And what about you?" He glanced back at her, the gold in his eyes dimming. "I am beyond forgiveness." Something in her chest tightened. She should have turned, should have left before the storm, but instead she stepped closer. "You saved me," she said quietly. "That doesn't sound unforgivable." He looked down at her, and for a moment, his guard slipped. Beneath the scars, beneath the power, there was a loneliness so deep it echoed. "Do not mistake mercy for kindness," he murmured. "Then what is it?" He hesitated, then said almost reluctantly, "Instinct." She didn't believe him. Instinct didn't bind wounds. Instinct didn't whisper her name like a memory. Lightning flashed, casting a brief white glow across his face. And in that instant, Kiala saw something ancient in his expression, a recognition he was fighting to hide. Her hand moved before she could think. She reached out, just barely brushing his arm. His skin was warm, not cold as she expected. Alive, solid. The contact jolted through both of them like lightning. Ryagor drew back sharply, eyes wide as if burned. The low growl that escaped him wasn't anger. It was fear. "What was that?" Kiala whispered. He didn't answer. He turned away again, breathing hard, gripping the cave wall as if anchoring himself. "Go," he said hoarsely. "Now." The wind outside howled. The storm had arrived. Kiala didn't move. "You're shaking. Do not concern yourself with things you don't understand." Her voice softened. "Then make me understand." He turned then, slowly, painfully, to face her. Rainlight shimmered through the cave entrance, scattering against his scales. His eyes held hers, full of something raw and desperate. "I cannot," he said, "because if you knew, you'd never look at me again." Her breath caught. "You don't know that." Ryagor stepped back into shadow. "Leave before the forest decides you belong to me." The words lingered in the air, heavy and dangerous. But beneath them was truth, not a threat, but a warning. Kiala stared at him, torn between fear and fascination. Every instinct told her to run. But something deeper, something her heart didn't yet understand, rooted her in place. "You called my name," she whispered again. Riagor's golden eyes lifted to hers, "and I will never forgive myself for it." A shiver ran through her. Lightning flared again, illuminating the cave, and for an instant she saw not a monster, but a man trapped inside his own shadow. The storm roared, drowning the forest in sound. Riagor turned away, stepping out into the rain. His voice came softer this time, but it carried through the downpour. "Go home, Keela." She stood at the cave's mouth, watching him disappear into the trees, the storm swallowing his silhouette, the scales, the fur, the impossible grace. But she didn't move, not for a long time. Because deep down she knew. People only spoke a name like that when it meant something, and somehow in that cursed creature's voice her name had sounded like a promise. The storm lasted until dawn. By the time Kiala reached the village, her cloak was soaked through, her hair tangled with leaves, and her heartbeat still carried the echo of his voice. "Go home, Kiala." She had obeyed, but her spirit hadn't left that cave. The village lay hushed beneath the fog. Smoke rose thinly from chimneys, carrying the scent of wet ash. The moment she stepped past the first hut, whispers followed her, low, sharp, slicing through the morning air. She crossed the river. "They say the wolf snake took her. Then why is she still breathing?" Kiala didn't answer any of them. Her focus was on her brother. She pushed through the wooden door of their small cottage and dropped to her knees beside his bed. Eamon's fever had broken. His skin was pale, but no longer burning. The healer sat beside him, grinding herbs in a small bowl. She looked up, her wrinkled face unreadable. "You found it," the woman said softly. "The lunar bellflower." Kiala nodded, her voice tight. "It was beyond the river. She hesitated. "I almost didn't make it." The healer's gaze flicked to her cloak, still damp and torn at the hem. "You shouldn't have gone alone, child. The forest beyond the river is cursed." "I know." But she didn't. Not really. Not until she'd looked into golden eyes that haunted her even now. By evening, Eamon stirred awake. When she tried to feed him broth, he smiled faintly. "You went there for me?" "Yes," she whispered, brushing his hair back. "And you're going to live." His hand tightened weakly on hers. "You shouldn't have gone, Kea. They say no one returns from there." "I did." Then maybe the stories are wrong. She wanted to believe that, but the weight in her chest said otherwise. That night, the elders came, 3 of them, cloaked in gray, their faces lined with years of superstition and fear. They sat around the fire in her cottage, the flickering light carving deep shadows across their faces. "The forest beyond the river is not for us," said the eldest, her voice trembling like the flame itself. "You trespassed where the moon goddess cast her punishment." Kiala stood still, every muscle taut. "Punishment?" "The wolf snake," another elder whispered. "A creature made from betrayal. Once he was a protector of the packs, chosen by the moon herself. But he defied her, spilled blood where mercy was meant to dwell." Kiala's breath hitched. "And for that he was cursed?" "Yes," said the elder. "Half wolf, half serpent. A symbol of divided loyalty, forever bound to the shadows he once hunted." Her stomach turned cold, forever bound. "And if he finds a heart pure enough to see through his curse," the third elder murmured, "the moon will test him again. For the curse was never meant to end, only to repeat." Kiala's pulse quickened. "What does that mean?" The elder's eyes met hers, pale and hollow. "It means that the forest remembers. It always finds a way to make old sins new again." They left her with that warning, and a silence that felt like a weight pressing against her lungs. When she finally lay beside her brother, sleep refused her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Riagor's face, the flicker of pain when she said his name, the way he turned from her like a man afraid of what he might feel. She didn't want to care, but she did. Outside, the night whispered. The wind moved through the trees beyond the village as if carrying someone's breath. The sound made her shiver. And miles away, in the heart of the forest, Riagor woke to the same wind. The cave was cold again, though the storm had passed. Rainwater dripped from the ceiling, echoing through the hollow stone. Riagor sat near the entrance, his claws resting against the rock, his mind far from the present. The scent of her still lingered faintly in the air, soft, human, alive. He should have let her go that night, completely. He should have erased her scent, burned every trace of her. But his curse had its own will, and it had remembered her name before his heart had. Kiala. He exhaled slowly, the sound more like a growl than a sigh. His chest ached with a memory he didn't want. For the first time in years, he dreamed. He saw himself as he once was. Not a monster, but a man. A warrior of the moonlit packs, sworn to protect the border between their world and that of humans. His fur had been silver then, his eyes clear as sunlight on ice. He remembered the battle, the screams, the blood, the smoke. The witch who stood at the edge of the field, calling down fire to protect her people. She had not been his enemy, not really. Her magic had burned, but her eyes had held sorrow. He should have killed her. Instead, he had shielded her. And in doing so, he had betrayed his own. The moon had come to him that night, not as light, but as judgment. Her voice was cold, endless. You chose the wrong heart to protect. He had begged for her mercy. But mercy, she said, was for those who obeyed the balance of fate. When the light struck him, his body split in two, wolf and serpent, bound by venom and fury. His brothers turned from him. His pack burned his name from their songs, and the witch he had saved. She had lived long enough to weep. Her tears had fallen upon him as the curse sealed his soul in shadow. Riagor's claws dug into the stone now, the memory clawing through him like fire. He had thought he'd buried it, until Kiala. The same eyes, the same voice when she spoke his name. He rose suddenly, pacing the edge of the cave. The forest stirred at his movement, the ground trembling softly underfoot. His tail lashed once against the stone. She cannot be the same, he muttered. She cannot be. But fate was crueler than reason. He stepped outside. The storm had washed the forest clean, leaving the air heavy and alive. Shafts of moonlight broke through the thinning clouds, and the mist curled like breath. Riagor tilted his head to the sky. Why her? No answer came, only the whisper of wind through the branches, the soft cry of some distant night bird. The forest had its own will. It always did. Back in the village, morning came with uneasy peace. Kiala carried a basket through the market, her hood drawn low, trying to ignore the eyes that followed her. Children whispered her name. Mothers pulled them away. You should have stayed across the river, one man muttered as she passed. She ignored him. Her thoughts were elsewhere. On the way, his voice had trembled when he said her name, on the look in his eyes when she'd asked why. She didn't want to believe the elders, didn't want to think he was some divine punishment. Because beneath the curse, there had been sorrow, not malice. That night she sat by her window, staring toward the woods. The wind had changed again, carrying a faint sound, almost like a heartbeat in the distance. Her brother stirred in his sleep, murmuring, "Kia, someone's calling you." Her blood went cold. She turned to him. "What did you say?" He blinked, half awake. A voice. It sounded like thunder. Riagor. Her heart leapt, though she didn't want it to. She looked out the window again. The forest waited, silent and alive. Far away, Riagor stood at the edge of the forbidden river. He hadn't crossed this place since the curse. The water shimmered under the moonlight, alive with faint light. Beneath its surface he saw his reflection, Neither wolf nor serpent, both and neither. The face that looked back at him was monstrous, but his eyes were still his own. You shouldn't have said her name, he muttered to himself. The wind carried the faintest echo, the same words he had once heard from the moon herself. You shouldn't have saved her. He roared into the night, a sound that split through the trees and sent every creature fleeing. The river stilled as if in fear, but deep in his chest, beneath the anger, something else stirred. An ache, a memory, a need. He wanted to see her again, not because the curse demanded it, because he did, and that terrified him more than the moon ever could. Back in the village, Kiala dreamt. In the dream, she walked through mist. The trees whispered her name in voices that weren't human. Ahead of her stood a man with silver eyes and hands covered in blood. When he turned, she saw both faces, one human, one monstrous, and the shadow of a serpent coiled behind him. He reached for her. Kiala, he whispered. You once saved me. She woke with a gasp, heart pounding, the echo of that voice still in her ears. The fire had burned low. The wind outside sighed against the wooden walls. She rose, unable to stay still. Something inside her was pulling, not fear this time, but gravity. The same pull she'd felt in that cave when he'd said her name. When she stepped outside, the forest waited, quiet, endless, alive. And somewhere deep within it, a cursed creature looked toward the same horizon, feeling her heartbeat call through the night. Fate, it seemed, had already chosen. The days that followed were quiet, too quiet. Kiala moved through them like a ghost, pretending not to hear the whispers that trailed her every step. Her body stayed in the village, but her mind wandered to the forest. To him. No one had seen the wolf snake in years, and yet she had. No one had spoken to it and lived, and yet she had. Each time she remembered his voice, deep, scarred, and strangely human, it drew something out of her she couldn't name. But reality has a way of reminding dreamers where they belong. Her brother's fever returned. It began with tremors in the night. His skin turned cold as frost, his eyes flickering with pain that no herb could soothe. The healer came and went, muttering that something was wrong beyond sickness. The forest, the woman whispered, fear tightening her wrinkled face. Whatever crossed that river has followed you home. Kiala sat at her brother's bedside, heart hammering. No, it can't be. But she felt it, the pull, the invisible thread between her and something ancient. When the moon rose red that night, deep, bleeding crimson, the wind carried the faint echo of a howl that didn't belong to this world, and her decision was made. The forest greeted her like an old secret, mist coiled low over the ground. The trees shivered in the scarlet light, their leaves whispering warnings she ignored. The forbidden river shimmered ahead, reflecting the blood moon above. She didn't hesitate this time. Her boots splashed into the current. The water was freezing, biting at her skin, but she pushed forward, teeth clenched, breath shaking. When she reached the other side, silence met her, thick, heavy, alive. The cave waited where she'd left it. Its mouth loomed between two crooked rocks, dark as the heart of night. Riagor, she whispered. Her voice broke on his name. For a moment, only the drip of water answered. Then, from the shadows, a sound, low, resonant, a growl that trembled through the air. He emerged slowly. The moonlight caught his form, the great coiling body of a serpent, scales gleaming like obsidian, and above it, the head of a wolf, eyes burning gold. The sight should have terrified her. It didn't. Why did you come back? His voice was rough, like stones grinding together, but beneath it was something human, wounded. My brother, she breathed. He's dying. The herbs didn't work. The healer said it's spreading, something dark. You said your venom can kill or heal. Ryagor's eyes flickered. You heard that from the elders. I heard it from the forest. He stepped closer, and she held her ground though her pulse pounded in her ears. Nay. If I give you what you ask, he said quietly, it may end his life before dawn. My venom isn't mercy, Kiala. It's balance. It takes what it gives. Tears filled her eyes. Then let it take from me. Just save him. The monster before her fell silent. Something in him twisted, something old, something that remembered compassion long before curses. You don't know what you're asking. I do. Her voice trembled. And I trust you. Those words hit him harder than claws ever could. He turned away sharply, the serpent half of him coiling tight, fighting a battle unseen. The blood moon is strong tonight, he said at last. It feeds my curse. If I draw venom now, I weaken myself. I'll help you, she whispered. He looked at her, really looked, and the world narrowed to the space between them. Very well, he said softly. But once this is done, the bond cannot be undone. She didn't understand what he meant, not yet. The ritual began under the blood moon. Ryagor lay half within the cave, his great body trembling as he forced the venom from his own fangs. It dripped black as ink into a stone bowl, thick and shimmering. Every drop that fell drew a low snarl of pain from him. The scales around his neck split slightly, the curse fighting back. Kiala knelt beside him, hands shaking as she steadied the bowl. Stop, he growled, fangs flashing. Don't speak. It must be done. His claws sank into the earth, carving deep scars into the rock. Sweat, dark and glistening, ran down his fur. When the last drop fell, Ryagor collapsed onto his side, breathing hard. Kiala dropped the bowl, rushing to his wound. Ryagor! His body shuddered. Go. Take it to your brother. She pressed her hands against the wound instinctively, trying to stop the bleeding. No, you'll die. He bared his teeth, eyes blazing. You can't stop this. But as her palms met his flesh, the cave exploded with light. A mark blazed beneath her hands, gold and crimson intertwining, spreading like fire through his veins. It crawled up her arms too, searing her skin with matching patterns. Ryagor roared, his body convulsing. Kiala gasped, unable to pull away. The mark pulsed once, twice, and then settled, glowing faintly on both of them. When the light faded, silence fell again. Ryagor lay still, breathing ragged. The mark over his chest shimmered faintly, mirrored on Kiala's palms. What just happened? She whispered. His golden eyes opened, softer now, though still burning with something fierce. You've bound us. Bound? He lifted his head weakly. The moon's mark. It ties two fates into one. My life now answers to yours, and yours to mine. Kiala froze, staring at her hands. The mark glowed once more, as if alive. That wasn't my intent? He gave a low, broken laugh. Intent means nothing to the moon. She wanted to speak, but the sound of his breathing changed. Slower, weaker. The venom ritual had drained him. Ryagor. Go, he rasped. Save your brother. Tears streaked her cheeks. Not without you. The look he gave her was both painful and tender. You can't help me here. The forest will heal what it can. You, however. His gaze softened, almost pleading. Must live. She hesitated, her fingers brushing the side of his muzzle. The warmth of his breath ghosted against her skin. I'll come back. He didn't answer, but his eyes closed as though the sound of her promise steadied him. By the time Kiala returned to the village, dawn bled pale over the horizon. She mixed the venom into the herbal tonic, praying under her breath as she poured a drop between Amon's lips. For a long, breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, his breathing eased. The trembling stopped. His skin warmed beneath her touch. Amon? She whispered. His eyes opened, clear and calm. Kia? Relief broke through her like sunlight. She clutched him close, tears spilling freely. But as she pulled away, her gaze caught something on his wrist, a faint glow. The same mark, smaller, pulsing once before fading into his skin. Her heart skipped. The bond wasn't just between her and Riagor. It had touched her brother too. Far away, in the shadows of the forest, Riagor stirred. The mark on his chest glowed faintly, the pulse steadying his breath. The curse whispered at the edge of his mind, but something stronger silenced it. Her warmth, her life, the thread now tied to his. He opened his eyes to the fading moonlight. "She bears my mark," he murmured, "and the bond is sealed." He turned toward the rising sun, the serpent in him hissing low, restless. For the first time in centuries, he felt not the weight of loneliness, but connection. Dangerous, irrevocable, real. Back in the village, Kiala sat beside her brother's bed, exhaustion pulling at her bones. The mark on her palm pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, a soft golden light beneath her skin. She should have felt afraid. Instead, she felt whole. The bond between her and the creature in the woods hummed faintly, like a heartbeat shared across distance. And somewhere, deep within her, a voice whispered, low, ancient, familiar, "We are one now." Kiala's eyes widened. She looked toward the forest through her window. The trees stood silent under the dawn, but she could feel him, alive, watching, waiting. That night when sleep came, it carried her into the same mist as before. But this time, Riagor stood closer. Not the monster she'd first seen, but something caught between man and beast. His features blurred, beautiful, tragic. He reached out a clawed hand and she didn't flinch. "The moon's bond," he whispered. "You've tied your life to mine." "What does that mean for us?" she asked softly. He looked up, the red light of the moon bleeding through the mist. "It means your fate is no longer your own." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they felt like truth. When she awoke, the mark on her palm glowed faintly once more, and in the distance the faintest echo of a growl rolled through the forest. Deep, longing, protective. Somewhere, under the dying moon, Riagor whispered her name like a prayer. "Kiala." And though miles apart, she whispered back, soft, certain, unafraid. "Riagor." The bond pulsed once between them, alive, ancient, unbreakable. The night after the blood moon lingered in silence. The village rested, unaware that its peace was borrowed time. Beneath that fragile calm, two hearts pulsed in rhythm, one hidden in the deep forest, the other among fragile walls of wood and smoke. Kiala had not slept since her brother's recovery. She watched him breathe, steady and warm, but her thoughts were miles away. Every heartbeat carried an echo, his echo. Every breath she took shimmered faintly with a second presence she could not name, though she knew it intimately now. Riagor. The name burned quietly behind her ribs, and when she closed her eyes she felt his pain, low and restless, moving like a tide through her body. She pressed her palm against her chest, over the mark that now lived beneath her skin. It glowed faintly, almost invisible in daylight, but under darkness it pulsed softly, gold twined with red, the symbol of something ancient, something forbidden. She whispered to the air, "Are you awake?" In the heart of the forest, a pair of golden eyes opened. The bond had changed him. Riagor had always been aware of the forest's rhythm, the heartbeat of earth, the hum of magic. But now there was something else entwined with it. Her. Each time she dreamed, her emotions brushed against him. Fear, warmth, confusion. It stirred memories he had buried centuries ago, memories of love and loss, of a woman who had once stood in moonlight just as Kiala did now. He had failed that woman. He had been cursed for it. And now, fate had brought another. He rose slowly, his massive form shifting in the faint dawn. His scales shimmered where the mark pulsed across his chest, still tender, still burning faintly with her touch. The air carried her scent even from miles away, wildflowers and salt tears. The wolf in him wanted to run toward it, the serpent in him whispered caution, but the bond silenced both. He could feel her calling. That night, Kiala dreamed again. She was not herself in the dream. She stood in another body, his. She saw through his eyes centuries ago, a battlefield under a crimson sky. Wolves and men clashed in brutal chaos, flames devoured trees, blood soaked the earth. And there, among the screams, a witch stood with hands raised, light spiraling from her palms. Her hair was white as bone, her eyes endless silver. She was chanting words Kiala couldn't understand, but Riagor, the warrior within the vision, knew them well. They were words of protection, of love. He ran to her through the smoke, but before he reached her, an arrow of light struck his chest. His body twisted, fur turning to scales, claws to fangs, humanity to curse. The witch screamed his name, Riagor, before the flames swallowed her whole. Kiala jolted awake, heart hammering. Sweat dampened her sheets. The scent of ash clung to her skin, though there was no fire. She pressed trembling fingers to the mark on her chest. It was hot, throbbing like a wound. Then softly she heard his voice. "Do you see now?" She froze. The voice wasn't in her room. It was inside her head. "Riagor, you touched the past. Our bond carries memory as well as life." "I saw her," Kiala whispered. "The witch who cursed you." A pause. Then his voice, low, pained. "She didn't curse me, Kiala. She tried to save me." That night, she returned to the forest. The moon hung heavy and full, silver light dripping through the canopy. The path seemed to recognize her this time. The mist parted, the river's whisper softened, as though guiding her. When she reached the cave, Riagor was waiting. His body glowed faintly in the moonlight, a shadow sculpted from light and sin. His eyes found hers instantly. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "The bond grows stronger each time you cross." She stepped closer, defiant. "Then let it grow." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand what it means. The mark ties more than life. It ties spirit, soul, memory. What I feel, you feel. What hunts me, hunts you." "I already feel you," she said. "Every time I close my eyes." He turned away as if afraid of his own heartbeat. "You dream of my curse because the moon wills it, not because you should." Kiala hesitated, then took another step. The space between them pulsed faintly with heat. "Then tell me what the moon wants." Riagor's voice deepened, almost a growl. "The moon wants balance. I am a wound she could not heal. You..." His gaze locked on hers, fierce and longing. "You are the reminder that she never gave up trying." Her breath hitched. "You talk like you've already lost." He looked down at his claws, flexing them as if they disgusted him. "I lost everything that night. The witch who loved me, my pack, my name." She frowned softly. "Your name is Riagor." "It was once," he murmured. "Before the serpent, before the curse." He turned fully then, the faint light spilling across his face. His features were sharp, haunted, but beautiful in their tragedy. His eyes, those golden, inhuman eyes, held centuries of loneliness. Something inside her broke open. She reached out without thinking, her fingers brushing against his chest, where the mark glowed. The warmth that leapt between them was alive, like the air itself recognized their touch. Riagor stiffened, his breath catching. "Kiala." Her voice was a whisper. "Do you feel it too?" "Yes." His answer came out rough, unguarded. "And I shouldn't." "Why?" "Because every time I do, it becomes harder to let you go." They stayed like that for what felt like forever. Two souls hovering between fear and desire. between duty and something older than either of them could name. When she finally pulled her hand away, the mark on her palm glowed faintly brighter, as if aware of its defiance. The cave was silent except for their breathing. Then Ryagor spoke again, quieter this time. "There is something coming," he said. "I can feel it in the wind. The bond has not gone unnoticed." "What do you mean?" He lifted his head, nostrils flaring. "The moon hunters." Her stomach dropped. "The what?" "An order of wolves who serve the goddess. They hunt those who defy fate, creatures like me. They sense the mark now, through the bond. They'll come for you because through you they can find me." Kiala's heart pounded. "Then I'll stay here, with you." His expression hardened. "You can't. If they find us together, they'll kill me?" She interrupted softly. "Then let them try." "Keela." His tone was half snarl, half plea. "You don't understand. I've seen what they do. They don't just kill, they unmake. They tear the bond from the soul until nothing remains but dust." She stepped closer again, eyes burning. "Then they'll have to tear through both of us." The silence that followed was heavy enough to break the air. Ryagor looked at her as though seeing something he had never believed possible. "You're not afraid." She smiled faintly, tears glinting in her eyes. "I was once. Before you." Something in him cracked. He lowered his head, eyes closing. "You're a fool," he murmured. "I know." Her voice trembled. "So are you." Outside, the wind shifted. Ryagor's head snapped up. His eyes darkened. "They're closer than I thought." A howl echoed from far beyond the river, sharp, haunting, filled with rage. The forest itself shivered. Kiala flinched. "That's them." "Yes." He moved toward the cave entrance, muscles coiling. "The moon hunters are many and they serve without mercy. The scent of our bond calls them like blood in the water." She stepped beside him. "Then we fight." Ryagor turned to her, his gaze torn between fury and awe. "You're human. Then teach me not to be." For a long moment, he simply stared. Then a small, broken laugh escaped him. "You sound like her. The witch from your memories." He nodded once. "She too believed she could stand beside me. She died for it. Then maybe this time the moon will let us rewrite the story." He looked at her as though she had just spoken a prophecy. "Kiala." His voice dropped to a whisper. "If the moon hunters come, they'll see the mark. They'll know. Once that happens, there is no turning back." Her hand rose, resting against his chest once more. "Then there's no turning back." The mark between them flared, gold and red entwining, pulsing like a shared heartbeat. The light filled the cave, chasing back the darkness for a single perfect moment. In that instant, Ryagor felt it all, her fear, her love, her defiance, and she felt his sorrow, his yearning, his endless hunger to be understood. Neither quite human, nor beast. Something new. When the light dimmed, she whispered, "What happens now?" He looked toward the blood-colored moon outside. "Now," he said softly, "we wait for the war that was written the moment you touched me." The night answered with another distant howl, closer this time, sharper, echoing through the valley like a promise of destruction. Kiala shivered. Ryagor's tail coiled protectively around her, his golden eyes glinting in the darkness. "Sleep if you can," he murmured, "before the storm finds us." But she didn't sleep. She watched him instead. The creature the world feared, the soul the moon had scarred, and in that silence, she whispered words only the bond could carry. "I'm not leaving you." And miles away, the leader of the moon hunters raised his head to the wind, catching her scent. The scent of a human marked by the beast. He smiled, cold and certain. "The cursed one lives, and this time the moon will have her vengeance." The forest trembled. The hunt had begun. The night broke open with the sound of horns. They weren't ordinary horns. These were the moon hunter's call, a low, shuddering note that turned the air to ice. Kiala jerked awake beside the dying embers of the cave fire. The glow of the mark on her wrist pulsed violently, as if warning her that the world outside had changed. Riagor was already standing. His eyes burned gold, his chest rising with the same restrained fury she had seen once before, the fury that belonged to the serpent. "They've found us," he said, his voice rough, distant, already half-beast. "Then we run," she whispered. He shook his head. "They won't stop until one of us is dead." A branch cracked beyond the entrance. The scent of steel and wolfsbane hit them like smoke. The hunters were close, too close for escape. Outside, torches split the mist and armored shadows moved among the trees. Their chants were old and cruel, drawn from the language of wolves long forgotten. Keela pressed herself against the cold stone, heart hammering. Please don't let them find him. She had seen Riagor wounded before, bleeding from his own venom, but never this quiet. His silence meant he was counting breaths, timing the moment he would lose himself. A whistle cut through the air. The first arrow hit the mouth of the cave, sparking against rock. The second caught Riagor in the shoulder. He didn't even flinch. "Stay behind me," he murmured. And then the serpent came. It wasn't a roar. It was a sound older than language. The air rippled and the ground seemed to pulse under Kiala's feet. Scales erupted across his skin, black and iridescent, reflecting the moonlight like shattered glass. His spine arched, limbs elongating, claws splitting from fingers. The beast of legend stepped forward, the same creature mothers used to frighten their children into silence. But to Kiala, he was still him. The hunters screamed. Some loosed their arrows, others turned and fled into the fog, but none escaped the blur that moved between the trees. The serpent's tail whipped through the clearing, breaking spears, crushing earth. Fangs found flesh. Silver shattered. Kiala couldn't look away. Every strike was fury, but beneath that fury was sorrow, an agony centuries deep. This wasn't killing for vengeance. It was survival, laced with grief. When the last horn fell silent, the forest did too. Riagor stood amid the ruin, breathing hard. Blood, his and theirs, steamed in the cold. His scales flickered as the magic began to fade, the monstrous form collapsing back into flesh and bone. He turned, eyes still glowing faintly, and saw her. She should have been afraid. Every story told her to run, to scream, to call him a monster. Instead, Kiala walked toward him. "Don't," he rasped, staggering back. "You shouldn't see me like this." But she didn't stop. She reached up, her hand trembling, and pressed her palm against the side of his face. His skin was fever-warm, his pulse wild beneath it. "You're not the monster they say," she whispered. Something inside him broke. The weight he'd carried for centuries. The guilt, the curse, the loneliness, split open under her voice. He fell to his knees. The forest was quiet except for his ragged breathing. Kiala sank beside him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. His body shook, half from pain, half from something that felt like disbelief. "I killed them," he said hoarsely. "I killed them all. They came to kill you. That doesn't make it right." Her hand found his, fingers sliding over the mark that tied them. It pulsed softly, a heartbeat shared between them. "Then let me carry what's left," she said. "You don't have to bear it alone." Riagor's head lowered against her shoulder. The serpent inside him coiled, restless, but did not fight. For the first time since the curse began, it didn't want to destroy. It wanted to stay. Hours passed. The moon climbed high, blood red through the drifting smoke. Kiala cleaned his wounds in silence, tearing strips from her cloak. Each touch drew another shiver from him, another reminder that he was real, still breathing. When she pressed the last cloth to his arm, he caught her wrist gently. "Why do you help me?" "Because you saved me," she said simply. "Because you feel." He almost smiled, the expression broken and brief. "Feeling is what damned me. Then maybe feeling will set you free." Their eyes met, human and cursed, bright with something neither of them could name. The bond pulsed once more between them, not just warmth this time, but memory. Flashes of another moon, another night, another woman's scream. Kiala gasped. "What did you see?" he asked, though he already knew. "A battle," she whispered. "And you, before all this, you weren't a monster." He turned away. "I was worse. I loved the wrong soul, and the gods made certain I would never forget." A howl rose in the distance, one not born of pain but of warning. More hunters. They would not rest until Riagor's head hung in their temple. He staggered to his feet. "We need to go. There's an old river path, hidden by the serpent's root." She looked up at him. "You can barely stand. I can still protect you." But when she reached for him, his strength failed. He stumbled and she caught him against her chest. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Her breath against his throat, his hand curling at her waist, both of them aware that survival had bound them more tightly than destiny ever could. "I'm not leaving you," she said. He looked at her, truly looked, as if memorizing the face of the only light left in his dark world. "Then you'll die with me. Then we'll live together." The words broke through the fog like dawn. He didn't answer, couldn't. He only lifted a hand, tracing the glowing mark on her skin with a claw that trembled as if afraid to touch her. The light between them flared, bright enough to drive back the shadows for a moment. By the time they reached the river path, the forest had fallen into uneasy silence. Behind them, the bodies of the hunters lay scattered, a warning, or perhaps a curse renewed. Ahead, the river glimmered like black glass under the moon. Riagor stood at the edge, breathing hard. "If they find us here, there'll be more blood." "Then let there be," she said, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "I'm done running from what the world calls wrong." He turned to her slowly. "You don't understand what you're saying." "Maybe not, but I know what I feel." That silenced him more effectively than any spell. The current caught the moonlight and threw it across her face, painting her in silver. She looked unearthly, fearless, alive. He wanted to touch her again, to prove she wasn't a dream conjured by loneliness. He didn't move. Neither did she. They stood there, two creatures shaped by the same cruel fate, until the first whisper of dawn touched the horizon. Far away, in the ruined clearing, the blood on the ground began to smoke. Symbols burned into the soil, the mark of the moon hunters. The forest trembled as if something older and darker than Riagor had awakened to the scent of shared blood. And above them all, the red moon faded, but its promise lingered. Fate had found them, and it would not let go. The dawn after the blood moon felt heavy, as if the forest itself mourned. Mist rose from the earth like the ghosts of those slain, curling around the roots of the trees. Kiala sat by the river's edge, staring into the current that mirrored her reflection in shattered fragments. Behind her, the forest still smelled of iron and sorrow. Riagor had not spoken since the battle. He had stood at the water's edge all night, unmoving, his gaze fixed on the horizon where light met fog. The bond between them pulsed faintly, not with warmth this time, but with something hollow, distant. When she finally rose, she found him gone. Only the faint imprint of his claws remained in the mud, leading deeper into the woods. "Riagor?" Her voice carried softly through the mist. No answer, only the steady drip of river water against stone. He had left without a sound. The hours that followed blurred together. She wandered aimlessly, clutching the mark on her wrist as though it were a compass. The forest felt wrong without him. Every shadow whispered his name, every branch groaned beneath unseen weight. Then came the voice. "Child of ash and moonlight, you walk where you should not." Kiala turned sharply. An old woman stood between the birches, her eyes milky white, her body wrapped in a shawl woven with wolf's fur and serpent scales. Time seemed to bend around her. One moment she was far, the next she stood within arm's reach. Who are you? Kiala asked, stepping back. Someone who remembers what the world wishes to forget. The woman's voice was cracked but strong, like the sound of dry leaves crushed underfoot. You bear the mark of the beast, yet you are not his prey. Kiala's heart raced. You know about Riagor? The old seer tilted her head. I know of the cursed king and the blood that bound him to the serpent, and I know of you, Kiala of the mortal line. Kiala froze. How do you know my name? A soft, mirthless smile. Because your blood told me. The seer extended a gnarled hand, her fingers brushing Kiala's wrist. The mark flared to life, glowing brighter than before. The forest seemed to draw closer around them, every rustle of leaves holding its breath. You are descended from the witch who cursed his kind, the old woman whispered. The blood of the moon's betrayer flows in your veins. Kiala shook her head. No, that can't be true. My family were healers. My mother. Your mother hid what she could not undo. The curse that birthed the wolf snake came from love twisted into vengeance. A witch once loved a wolf king. When he chose duty over her, she bound his soul to the serpent and damned his bloodline to madness. Kiala's knees weakened. And I... You are her echo, the seer said simply. Her descendant, born with the same light and the same power to end it all. The wind howled through the trees, carrying whispers that didn't belong to the living. What happens if the curse is broken? Kiala asked, her voice trembling. The serpent will die, the wolves will rise again, but the blood that carries the witch's gift, your blood, must pay the price. Kiala stepped back, clutching her chest as though she could silence her racing heart. So if I free him, I die? Such is the balance of old magic. The seer's gaze softened, almost pitying. Fate offers love, but demands sacrifice. Tears welled in Kiala's eyes. There has to be another way. There never was, the woman said, and he knows it. The world tilted. For a heartbeat, Kiala thought she'd misheard. He knows. The seer's expression did not change. The serpent's memory is older than you can imagine. When he touched your mind, when the bond marked you both, he saw the truth written in your soul. That is why he left. Not because he wished to, but because he must. Kiala's breath caught. No. She turned toward the forest, the ache in her chest sharper than any wound. He wouldn't just leave. Not like this. The seer's voice followed her, fading with the wind. The beast runs from what it cannot bear to lose. She ran. Through fog and thorns, through memories that weren't hers, flashes of Rigor's life bleeding into her vision, a battlefield of snow and flame, a witch's eyes full of betrayal, the serpent's roar tearing the heavens. She stumbled gasping until the forest opened into a clearing she didn't recognize. The cave where they had hidden together was empty. Cold ashes lay where their fire had been. His scent still lingered, sharp, metallic, heartbreakingly familiar. Riagor. Her voice echoed back at her, hollow. Nothing answered. The bond burned suddenly, a pulse of emotion so fierce it stole her breath. Sorrow, guilt, longing. He was out there, somewhere far, and she could feel him slipping further with every heartbeat. No, she whispered. You don't get to decide this alone. Night descended quickly. The mist turned red beneath the rising moon. Kiala followed the faint tug of the mark, deeper into the northern woods where the trees grew older and the air colder. Then she found him. Riagor knelt at the base of a dying tree, his claws digging into the earth. His wings, faint, serpentine, half-folded, shimmered weakly under the moonlight. His back was turned to her, but the tension in his shoulders told her he already knew she was there. You shouldn't have come, he said quietly. I had to. He turned, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw true fear in his eyes. Not of her, but for her. I know what you are, he said, Who you are. Her breath hitched. Then you know I didn't choose it. I know, he whispered, and that's why I have to protect you from me. He rose slowly, his movements pained. The forest seemed to bend away from him, the curse thrumming through his veins like thunder. If I stay near you, the prophecy will fulfill itself. They made sure of it. Then let it, she said, stepping closer. Let fate do what it wants, I'm not afraid. He laughed, but the sound broke. You should be. If you die because of me. Then it won't be because of you, she interrupted, her eyes glistening. It'll be because I chose you. He froze. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. Then he reached out, his hand trembling as his claws brushed her cheek. You don't understand, Kiala. The curse isn't just pain, it's hunger. It feeds on the heart, on love itself. If it takes you, it will turn me into what I was meant to be. Death. Then we fight it, she whispered, pressing her forehead against his chest. Together. He wanted to believe her. She could feel it in the way his breath shuddered against her hair, in the way his hands hovered near her back but didn't dare pull her closer. But then the bond flared again, a surge of images that struck them both. The serpent coiled around the moon, the witch's dying scream. Kiala's face bathed in crimson light. He gasped, stepping back as if burned. No. I saw it. You dying in my arms. Your blood on the ground. I can't. Riagor. He turned away, his voice breaking. If you love me, you'll let me go. Don't you dare say that. The tears finally fell, streaking down her face. Don't you dare run from me again. But the forest swallowed him. His form shimmered, dissolving into shadow and wind. The bond snapped like a stretched thread. Kiala fell to her knees, the sound of his name lost in the cold night. The seer watched from the distance, her pale eyes gleaming. The fire in her lantern flickered, showing glimpses of the serpent's mark etched into her own wrist, a symbol long hidden. Love always demands its due, she murmured to the dark. And the moon always collects. The wind carried her words through the trees, across the empty cave, over the blood-soaked clearing where the curse had begun. And somewhere in the shadows, Riagor roared, a sound not of fury this time, but of heartbreak, too ancient to name. The forest trembled. Destiny had been set in motion. The storm came without warning. Lightning tore across the sky, splitting the darkness into veins of silver and blue. Wind howled through the forest like the cries of lost souls tearing at branches flattening the grass. Kiala stumbled through the downpour, soaked to the bone, calling his name into the roar. Riagor. No answer. Only the crashing thunder and the endless whisper of rain against leaves. The mark on her wrist pulsed erratically, each beat a faint echo of his life force. Weaker. Fainter. He was close, but fading. Please, she breathed. Her voice broke into a sob. Don't you dare leave me. The forest, once his refuge, had turned into a labyrinth of fear. Every shadow looked like a snare. Every flash of lightning revealed ghosts of what she'd lost. But she kept going. Her feet bled. Her cloak clung heavy against her shoulders, yet still she ran. Because the bond refused to die. And then she saw it, a glimmer of silver between the trees. Kiala froze. At first she thought the storm was playing tricks on her eyes. But when lightning flared again, the sight became clear. Chains. Dozens of them. They hung from the ancient stones of an abandoned temple, glinting wet under the rain. And bound to them, his body limp, blood running dark against the rock, was Riagor. Riagor! She screamed, rushing forward. His head lifted weakly, eyes half open, dulled gold struggling to focus. The rain poured down his face, mixing with blood from the wounds that glowed where the silver burned into his skin. His claws were gone, his fangs retracted. The serpent's markings shimmered faintly, fading like dying embers. Kiala. His voice was barely a whisper, broken and raw. No, you can't be here. But she was already at his side, her trembling hands reaching for the chains. The silver sizzled against her palms, but she didn't care. Who did this to you? The hunters, he rasped. They found me when I left you. The prophecy. They think if they kill me under the blood moon, the curse dies with me. The word kill sliced through her. Then they'll have to kill me too. His eyes flared, desperate. No. His voice cracked with sudden strength. Kiala, go. You don't understand. The serpent inside me, it's fighting to stay alive. If you stay close, it will take you too. I don't care. Lightning struck again, illuminating her face. Fierce, tear-streaked, defiant. You think I've come this far just to watch you die? He tried to pull away, but the chains bit deeper, the silver sizzling against his skin. Smoke rose where metal met flesh. He gasped, arching in pain. Stop, she whispered, pressing her hands against his chest. Please, stop fighting me. He sagged, breathing raggedly. I'm trying to protect you, Kiala. I don't want your blood on my soul. Then live, she said, her voice breaking. Live for me. The storm raged on around them. She tugged at the chains again, ignoring the way they burned her hands. Every pull tore skin, but she didn't stop. The mark on her wrist blazed brighter, responding to the fury in her heart. Finally, she leaned close, pressing her forehead against his. If this curse wants blood, it can have mine, but it won't take you. And then she kissed him. The world fell silent. The rain froze midair. Thunder halted in the heavens. Even the fire of the silver chains dimmed, as if the universe itself bowed to that single moment. The union of love and curse, defiance and destiny. The mark on their wrists burned white-hot, light spilling through the chains, spreading through his body. Riagor's eyes widened as he felt it. Warmth, piercing through centuries of agony. Kiala, he gasped against her lips. But she didn't stop. Her tears mingled with the rain as she deepened the kiss, giving him everything, her fear, her pain, her soul. The serpent within him roared, fighting the purity of her touch, its voice 1,000 hissing echoes inside his skull. Mine, it whispered. She is mine. He cried out, the sound torn from the deepest part of him. His body convulsed as the two forces warred. Love against curse, light against darkness. The silver chains snapped one by one. Kiala stumbled back, the force of the breaking magic throwing her to the ground. Lightning struck the temple's spire, shattering stone and sending sparks into the rain. Riagor fell to his knees, hands clawing at the earth, his breath ragged and feral. His body changed, not into the full serpent, not into a wolf, but something between. His scales cracked, revealing pale skin beneath. His tail dissolved into mist. His voice, when he finally spoke, was human again, trembling, disbelieving. It's fading, he whispered. The curse. It's fading. Kiala crawled to him, clutching his face in her hands. You're free? He looked at her, eyes no longer gold, but the deep gray of storm clouds. I don't know. And then his expression twisted. Pain shot through him again. His back arched as the serpent's hiss echoed from within, furious, dying, but not defeated. She cannot have you. The voice thundered inside his mind. You belong to me, Riagor roared, the sound tearing through the storm. The earth cracked beneath him, the serpent's shadow coiled around his form, trying to reclaim what it had lost. Kiala grabbed his hands. Riagor, fight it. I can't, he gasped. It's stronger than, you can, look at me. He met her gaze, eyes wide with anguish. And in that instant, she saw it. Not a monster, not a curse, but a man who had fought too long to remember what peace felt like. I won't lose you, she whispered. She pressed her lips to his again, not in passion, but in surrender. The mark between them flared a second time, brighter than before, pouring light into his chest. The serpent screamed. a sound not heard by human ears, a sound that split heaven and earth. Its shadow burst apart, scattering into smoke and lightning that vanished with the storm. Then silence. When the rain finally stopped, Ryagor collapsed into her arms. His breathing was shallow. His skin burned from the silver, but the darkness that had always lingered in his aura was gone. Kiala brushed damp hair from his face. "It's over," she whispered. His eyes fluttered open. "You're shaking." "So are you." He smiled faintly. "I told you to go. And I told you I don't listen, Wial." For a moment they both laughed. Soft, fragile, human. The kind of laughter that only comes after surviving death itself. Then Ryagor's gaze darkened. "You shouldn't have done that. The curse, it's not gone completely. It's bound itself to you now." She blinked. "What?" "The serpent's essence. It sought another vessel. When you kissed me, it found your blood." Kiala's lips parted, trembling. "So now?" He nodded slowly. "Now it sleeps in you." Wind moved gently through the ruined temple. The storm had passed, but the world seemed quieter, subdued. Ryagor's hand found hers, his thumb brushing over the glowing mark that still shimmered faintly on both their wrists. "I'll find a way to free you," he said softly. She shook her head. "You already have." He looked at her, truly looked, as if memorizing every freckle, every tear. Then, with a quiet exhale, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. "If I could choose again," he whispered, "I'd still choose you." "And I'd still find you," she replied. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world held still, as if afraid to interrupt. Then Ryagor's voice broke the silence. Soft, sorrowful, final. "But if the serpent sleeps in you, they'll come for you next. The hunters, the gods, even the moon itself. And if staying with me means your death, then my life means nothing without you." He smiled faintly, a sad, beautiful smile. "You were never meant for this darkness, Kiala." "Then light it for me," she said, her tears glistening. He kissed her once more, slow, reverent, and then stood. The chains lay broken at his feet. The rain had washed the blood away, but not the pain in his eyes. He looked toward the forest, then back at her. "Forgive me." "Ryagor." Before she could finish, he vanished into the mist, the air trembling with the echo of his departure, the mark on her wrist dimming to a faint glow. Kiala fell to her knees, the scent of rain and silver lingering around her. The storm was over, but the war within her had just begun. The moon hung full and heavy above the forest, spilling its silver light across the ancient stones. It was the same temple where Ryagor had once been chained, now quiet, empty, but still pulsing faintly with the echoes of the serpent's wrath. Kiala stood in the center of it, her bare feet sinking into the wet earth. Her hair clung to her face, her cloak torn from the journey. She looked exhausted, hollowed by grief and resolve, but there was something fierce burning in her eyes, the look of someone who had made peace with her fate. The mark on her wrist still glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her heart. Each beat carried a whisper, his whisper. "Kiala, leave me. You can't undo what's been done." But she ignored it. She'd spent days searching for him, chasing his scent through rivers and shadows, guided only by their bond. Each night she dreamed of him, trapped between forms, his body shifting violently under the curse that refused to die. And tonight, she would end it. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and iron. The sky trembled with distant thunder, though no storm had yet come. Kiala raised her hands over the pool at the heart of the temple, once a place of offering, now a place of defiance. In her left palm, she held a dagger made of bone and silver. It had belonged to the first witch, her ancestor, the one who had cursed Ryagor's kind. The seer's voice echoed in her mind. Only the blood of the curse-born can unmake it, but blood given freely demands a life in return. Kiala exhaled slowly, Then take mine. Footsteps sounded behind her. She turned sharply, and there he was. Ryagor stepped from the shadows, his figure barely visible in the moonlight. His hair was soaked, his eyes dimmed, his body trembling from the serpent's lingering poison. He looked like a ghost, something caught between worlds. "Kiala," he rasped. "What are you doing?" She froze, the dagger still in her hand. "You shouldn't be here." He took another step forward, chains of silver still hanging from his wrists, broken but gleaming. "You were calling to me," he said softly. "I felt your blood sing. You think I wouldn't come?" Her breath caught. "If you stay, you'll die." He gave a hollow smile. "I've already died 100 times every time I left you." Kiala's hand trembled. "Don't say that." "Then stop," he said, his voice suddenly sharp. "Put the dagger down." "I can't." "Yes, you can," he shouted, the force of his voice shaking the air. "You think this will save me? It won't. The serpent may be gone, but the curse, it clings to every drop of blood in my body. You try to take it, it'll drag you with it." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Then let it. I've already made my choice." The air thickened. The moonlight brightened until it painted everything silver. Ryagor's breath came ragged, the beast within him stirring violently, sensing what she intended. He lunged toward her. "No!" But she moved faster, with a whisper of ancient words, words that tasted like fire and sorrow. She drew the dagger across her palm. Blood spilled into the pool, shimmering red under the moon. The mark on her wrist flared to life, brighter than ever before, and the air erupted with a low, mournful hum. The pool began to glow. The surface rippled, and within it, visions danced, flashes of his memories, centuries of torment and loneliness. Ryagor fell to his knees beside her. "Kiala, stop this." She smiled through her tears. "Do you remember what I said? That I never saw a monster?" "Don't." His voice cracked. "Please don't." She stepped closer, pressing her bleeding hand to his chest. The blood sizzled against his skin, and a brilliant white light spread across his body, seeping into every scar, every mark the serpent had left behind. "I saw a soul," she whispered, too broken to hope. The temple shook. Wind whipped around them, tearing at her hair and clothes. The light grew so bright it blinded them both. Ryagor gasped, clutching at her wrist, trying to pull her hand away, but she held firm. Her voice rose with the chant, her tone trembling but resolute. "Let what was bound be unbound. Let what was lost be free." The blood spread faster, crawling up his chest, into his veins. His back arched, his body convulsing as a low growl tore from his throat. The serpent's shadow, faint but furious, rose behind him one final time, its fanged maw opening in silent defiance. Kiala didn't flinch. She reached up with her other hand and pressed it over his heart. "You're not the monster," she said. "You're the man I chose." The serpent screamed, a sound that shattered the night, and then exploded into 1,000 shards of light that scattered into the air. When the world stilled, Ryagor fell forward, collapsing into her arms. His body was warm again, alive. The gray of his eyes had turned to gold, bright, pure, untainted. His claws had returned, his fangs gleamed faintly under the moon, but there was peace in his aura for the first time in centuries. The wolf had returned. "Kiala." His voice was soft, stunned. He looked down at her, and the sight made his heart stop. Her lips were pale, her eyes half closed. Blood dripped from her palm, trailing down his chest, glowing faintly before fading. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He shook her gently, his voice trembling. "Kiala, look at me. Open your eyes." She tried to smile. "You're free now." "Don't you dare say goodbye," he growled. "Don't you dare." But her breathing was shallow. Her fingers slipped from his. The curse. It needed a vessel. she whispered faintly. It took my blood. My life. That's how it ends. Ryagor gritted his teeth, his heart pounding painfully against his ribs. Then I'll give it mine. Take it back. It doesn't work that way, she said softly. Her hand trembled as she reached for his face, brushing away his tears. You always said you were cursed to destroy everything you touch, but look at me, Ryagor. He stared down at her, his vision blurred with anguish. You didn't destroy me, she whispered. You taught me what it means to love something enough to let it break you. The moonlight poured over them both, quiet and endless. Ryagor gathered her into his arms, holding her close as if sheer will could bring her back. Kiala, he whispered, pressing his forehead against hers. Don't leave me. Not like this. But her body was already going still. Her eyes fluttered once more, and then closed. For a moment the world stopped breathing. Then Ryagor roared, a sound of pure agony ripping through the night. His cry echoed through the mountains, shaking the trees and scattering the crows. It was the howl of a wolf mourning the moon. Hours passed. The moon sank lower in the sky, and dawn began to creep through the trees. The storm had long faded, leaving the forest eerily still. Ryagor remained where he was, kneeling beside her body. The glow of the mark on her wrist was gone. But as the first rays of sunlight touched her face, something shimmered faintly across her skin, a soft, silvery trace of the bond that had once linked them. He placed his hand over her heart. Your light lives in me now, he whispered, and I swear to the gods, I'll keep it burning. Then he stood, his wolf form flickering through his human shell. His eyes burned gold beneath the rising sun. He lifted his head toward the sky and howled. It wasn't just grief this time. It was a vow, a promise whispered into eternity. That morning the forest bloomed again. The curse had broken and the balance restored. But in the silence between the wind and the rustling leaves, her voice lingered still. A faint whisper carried through the air. You're not the monster they say. And somewhere deep within the wild, Ryagor's golden eyes glimmered as he disappeared into the dawn, the last beast of a dying age, now free, and forever haunted by the witch who saved him. The first light of dawn found Ryagor still holding her. The forest lay quiet around them, silver mist curling above the soil like smoke rising from the ashes of a dream. Her body was cold now, her skin pale as moonlight, yet when he brushed his fingers over her cheek, he could almost imagine she would stir. He rose to his feet, lifting her in his arms. The broken temple stood behind him like a memory already fading. Ahead, the river shimmered faintly through the fog. The river where they had met, where she had first defied her fear. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he walked on. By the time he reached the water's edge, the sky had begun to blush with gold. He knelt and laid her down upon the soft moss, her hair spilling out like strands of night against the earth. Do you remember this place? He whispered. You were so fearless that day. The sound of the river answered him, soft, endless. He reached for her hand. The mark on her wrist had faded almost completely, but when his thumb traced the faint outline, a single spark glowed beneath her skin. Just one more breath, he murmured. One more heartbeat. He dipped his hand into the river and let a few drops fall upon her lips. The current glimmered, carrying her blood, his blood, away into the forest. The water began to glow, threads of light weaving through it like veins of living silver. Then the forest stirred. Flowers bloomed where the light touched the ground. Leaves unfurled, trembling. The air filled with the scent of life returning, rich and green and wild. Ryagor looked up, and the moon, though fading, still hung above the rising sun. A voice drifted through the light. Love such as this was never meant to exist in shadows. The river brightened until he had to shield his eyes. When he looked again, a woman stood upon the water, her form woven of moonlight and mist. Her gaze held the depth of ages, neither cruel nor kind, but heavy with understanding. The moon goddess, Riagor breathed. She regarded him silently for a long moment, then turned her eyes to Kiala's still body. You would carry her even into death. Yes, his voice broke. Take me instead. Let her live. The goddess's expression softened. You have carried the curse for centuries, beast of two souls, yet even now you offer more. She knelt beside Kiala, touching a single finger to the girl's brow. Her love has rewritten the bond that once damned you. It has moved even me. Riagor's throat tightened. Then bring her back, please. The goddess looked up at him. There is a price for every miracle, and you know this. He bowed his head. Whatever it is, I accept. Then so be it. The light around them swelled, wrapping Kiala's body in a cocoon of silver flame. Riagor stepped back, shielding his eyes. The river roared as if alive, the current thrashing against its banks. The goddess's voice rose above the sound, ancient and solemn. By blood freely given, by hearts unbroken in death, let the circle be complete. Let the dawn rise where darkness fell. The light burst outward, then vanished. For a moment there was only silence. Then Riagor felt it, a heartbeat, weak, fragile but real. He dropped to his knees beside her, disbelief flooding through him. Her chest rose, shallow but steady. The color crept back into her lips. He laughed once, a sound half choked by tears. Kiala, you're alive. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it struck through him like lightning. Her eyes opened slowly. The first thing she saw was the sky. The second was him. Riagor, she breathed. The goddess watched them both. She lives, she said, but your bond has changed. You wished for her life. Now it will be your burden to remain as the beast until she speaks your name again of her own heart. He met the goddess's gaze. If that is the cost, I'll bear it gladly. The light faded. The goddess's form dissolved into the morning mist. Then love well, and without fear, she whispered, and was gone. The world fell quiet again. Riagor turned back to Kiala, who was now sitting up slowly, confusion and wonder mingling in her eyes. You look different, she murmured. He smiled faintly, but there was sorrow in it. His body was already shifting, scales replacing skin, claws where hands had been. The beast returned, though its eyes were the same molten gold. Don't be afraid, he said, his voice echoing through both throat and mind. I'm not. She reached for him. Her fingers brushed the curve of his muzzle, tracing the familiar warmth beneath the strange form. You kept your promise. And you kept your soul, he answered. They stayed that way for a moment, man and beast, miracle and mortal, surrounded by the living forest. Then Kiala leaned closer, her forehead resting against his. Her voice trembled, filled with awe and love. I don't care what form you wear. I see you. Something in him broke open at her words. Not pain this time, but release. The mark on his chest pulsed once more, answering hers. And then she said it, the word that had been written into his destiny from the beginning. Riagor. The sound of his name on her lips rippled through the air like thunder. The mark flared to life, gold and white and crimson all at once. The serpent's remnants burned away. His body convulsed, the scales receding, the claws dissolving. When the light faded, a man knelt before her, whole, human, trembling. Riagor stood before her, half shadow, half light. His chest still rose in ragged rhythm, each breath carrying the echo of her name. Kiala's eyes met his, not with fear, but recognition. The bond that had torn worlds apart was now all that remained to hold them together. She took a step closer, the hem of her torn dress brushing against his leg. The air thickened, humming with the ghost of their pain and the promise of something dangerous inevitable. His hand trembled when it found her waist, not from hesitation, but from too much need restrained too long. "Say it again," he murmured, his voice a growl that vibrated through her bones. Her lips parted. Riagor. That single word shattered the chains around his heart. He caught her mouth with his, fierce, consuming, a kiss that wasn't soft or polite but desperate, claiming, alive. She gasped and he deepened it, their bodies colliding like flame meeting oil. The heat of him seared through her, his touch tracing the line of her spine, pulling her closer until there was no space left between skin and soul. Her fingers found his hair, twisting, holding him there as though the world might crumble if he stopped. The rhythm of their breath broke into small, fevered sounds. Soft, aching, real. His lips moved from her mouth to her jaw, to the corner of her throat, tasting the salt of tears and magic. "Kiala," he breathed, voice rough, reverent. She tilted her head back, eyes fluttering shut, whispering, "Don't stop." But this wasn't hunger, not truly. It was surrender. It was everything they'd lost finding its way home again. His hands framed her face, slowing, gentling. Their foreheads pressed together, breath shared, hearts trembling. He kissed her again, slower now, deeper, the kind of kiss that rewrote every broken promise the curse had made them live through. Her tears mingled with his lips, and still they kissed, until the forest came alive with birdsong and light. When they finally parted, she stayed close, trembling in his arms, trembling in. "That," she whispered, breathless, "felt like forever." He smiled against her skin. "Then forever begins now." And as dawn washed over them, the forest bloomed anew. Two souls reborn in one heartbeat, their love no longer cursed, but carved into eternity. Riagor cupped her face in his hands. "Every dawn after this," he said, "will remind me that love can resurrect even the damned." She smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. "Then let's never forget what the night taught us." The wind carried their laughter across the forest, mingling with birdsong and the soft rush of the river. And somewhere far above, the moon goddess watched, her silver light dimming as the day claimed the sky, content at last with the love that had defied her curse. Every story ends, but the feeling remains. Thank you for listening to Tales by Jenny Moon, where hearts heal, break, and rise again. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, leave a comment, and share it with someone who believes in love's magic. Until the next story finds you, keep your heart open and your soul listening.